this so soon. I can't believe it. Let's talk about sleepers. Sleepers are really fun. I'm roughly defining a sleeper as someone outside of ESPN Best Available Top 60, except for one, which is Ricky Council. We'll get to him because I think he's kind of a cut above these guys, despite being weirdly mocked, super like low second round undrafted in like almost every mocker board I see. Despite him having like real upside, Ricky Council has special finishing ability, and betting on special traits is always a good idea. It's really rare to see a guy with his level of hang time and balance and touch and vertical explosion to just make the most ridiculous finishes. He's a really impressive driver too as well. It's not like just the finishing where he's able to use like basic handle moves and some burst. I love how instead of running straight into this defender as many college players do, he uses his really impressive agility. Look at him split this tight gap and finish there. Great Euro step by Ricky. He is a pretty impressive, like quick twitch athlete as well. Some of the moments of self-creation were really impressive where it's just straight ISO 1v1 with a cramp paint. And this like really quick double crossover move buckles the defender. And then he explodes with these steps into an offhand finish. It's really, really amazing stuff to see the way he's able to like attack a defense at 6'5", 6'6". And this like driving creation and finishing alone is enough to make him worth like a first round level pick to me. There are real issues with the shooting, and notably his like passing decision making can be really, really rough at times. He's just a very, very unwilling passer. The defense is inconsistent and the shot isn't great, as we'll get into, but there are like flashes of passing to the point where I think Council's issue is more just like a mentality and willingness, because he does make pretty impressive reads where he spins middle here, draws the defense, and kicks to the cutter there. We do see this fairly often. And in like a smaller role, his athleticism could probably shine more as a cutter. Arkansas like had notably like bad spacing, wasn't set up for great success in terms of Council's position, but his like finishing and rim numbers are all really, really interesting, and they profile really well historically, as well as these like guard size players who get to the rim a ton are really great at the rim. And as we see with Council, a good amount of his shots inside the arc are unassisted, which is always a good mark for self-creation upside as well. You have guys like Smart, Josh Hart, I think is a really interesting kind of analog as just this strong finishing wing who's developed, obviously was like a much better defender in college and, was probably better overall. But Council's like similar, like burly, strong finishing kind of guard. And a comp that I think is interesting that it was on a different query I did, but not this one, is Iman Shumpert, who was similar as a 6'5", really impressive, explosive athlete with flashes of off-dribble creation with his burst, hanging in the air and finishing with impressive touch, using his explosion to get to the rim. I think I accidentally have this play twice. Yeah, I do. But I think the idea of Council slotting into like a Shumpert type like bench wing athlete role, and Shumpert was a pretty useful role player for some very good Knicks and Cavs teams in his day as a wing who can come off the bench, get buckets if needed with that impressive self-creation, and then a smaller role, hopefully when he's not asked to create as much, the decision-making concerns come along. And again, the shot is a question mark, as well as volume isn't great. He's a fine free throw shooter. He has okay indicators. Just didn't make a lot of threes, but I don't really value that as an indicator that much, as we've talked about plenty on this channel. So Ricky, I think, is inexplicably fallen pretty far. Next guy is Craig Porter, who I don't even know if he's on ESPN's top 100, which is crazy because I think he's like a top 40 talent. Shout out to a couple of my guys, Chip, Draft Pow, who put me onto him. We're going to start with he is an advanced stats darling. So good, steal rate, block rate, an extremely rare, super high block rate guard, which is historically a pretty strong indicator, doesn't turn the ball over at all. And then I think this is really interesting in how good he is as a pull-up mid-range shooter, because the shot is the main issue. He doesn't take a lot of threes. The free throw is not great. It's pretty subpar. And when you look at the players to hit these indicators, there's so many really impressive, not only star-level players, but players that way outperform their draft outcome or project to outperform their draft outcome as well on this list. I think he's kind of like a smaller less good Derek White, which I really don't think is a slight because White was just the second best player on a title team. But when you look at the height and all of these guys are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and taller. Nobody has made the NBA at 6'2" or under with this stat profile. All of these guys who have these really impressive profiles just didn't work for one reason or another. So it's going to be interesting to see if Porter can, because he is really, really talented. More than just being a smart off-ball player, he's a really impressive handler and pick-and-roll player, which could give him a chance to set himself apart from that group, where he's comfortable splitting and hanging in the air to finish with his offhand. Porter uses quick moves and screen rejects to get into the paint. He's really strong, and the vertical is nice as well. I think the size shows up on tape for sure, both as a rim protector. His block rate is awesome, but there are times when his size hinders him in terms of getting up for contests, and that's going to be even more in the NBA. But you can see him use the beautiful quick behind the back, change directions. Look how low he is. I love the flexibility. It's such an important trait for ball creation and for defense as well, being able to get your torso lower than this guy, bump off this big man, and finish with the beautiful reverse. He's a really impressive creator. I just love that spin move. That was so sick. And obviously he didn't finish that step through, but the pick and roll creativity, the ball handling, especially in a class in the second round range where you don't have a lot of good guards or ball handlers or pick and roll guys, I think Porter is an obvious value play, where there is definite downside. He's 23 and a small guard who can't really shoot, but the defensive instincts are really special, both as a rim protector and just getting steals, digging at the nail. He's always making things happen on defense. And there is a role somewhere for Craig Porter. I really do believe that there is. Even if it's as a 7th, 8th man, that's someone you want in the second round. And someone who you're probably going to be able to get undrafted. I think he has a real chance to make an impact and surprise people and stick in the league, despite his definite weaknesses and downsides. The next guy is Tosan Evbuomwan, Princeton big. I believe it's Evbuomwan. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. He popped for me in the tournament where I had never really heard of him before, but he was really great as this 6'9", really mobile, athletic, perimeter-oriented big, where he was able to use his handle and his passing to rip apart potential future NBA player in Baylor Shireman, get really low. We talked about flexibility with Porter. How about a 6'9" guy doing the same thing, getting his shoulder below the defender, drawing help, and laying it down to his teammate? Porter is a good DHO big. I talk about how these DHO hub bigs are important in the modern NBA, and being able to operate from this free throw line extended area, run dribble handoffs and basic actions that NBA teams love to run, and be a handler and a passer as a big is such an asset, especially in the playoffs. And Tosan is legit beating guys off the dribble 1v1, and because he is 6'9" long, fairly athletic, bigs will guard him and he will burn them. He's quick, the first step and the flexibility again, and he has the wherewithal to slow up and find this kind of dump off pass as well. And I appreciated that Tosan was able to show his same stuff in the combine setting, which I'm valuing more and more these days, because I think it shows the ability to play, without the support of a coaching system or a scheme or structure, and with teammates you don't know and don't have chemistry with. And outside of his usual role, Tosan did his thing. He is so freaking strong. Look at him just shrug off Matthew Mayer like he's absolutely nothing and probably injure him by accident. But the bump Euro, I think because he can get so low and get his shoulder into this guy's chest, there's really nothing Mayer can do when Tosan's able to just bump him off of his spot and get into a wide open layup. This is a very NBA style play that I could genuinely see Tosan excelling in, where they are running a horns action and they run a little elbow get double screen for Tosan as the ball handler. This is the kind of creative stuff that I think a team could run for Tosan, because this kind of action forces your big defender to play as a ball screen defender, which 99% of bigs can't do. Tosan's able to get the angle and make a good pass as well here. So the kind of perimeter like versatility stuff you can do with Tosan, I think, as well as just being able to cook like slow-footed bigs, where Tosan is a bit on the smaller side. He's like more of a forward tweener, and his total lack of a jumper. Like Tosan just does not take any threes or mid-ranges, and it's really difficult to exist as a non-center without jumpers in the league, obviously. But I think there's real utility for Tosan, because when you have these slower-footed bigs, Ryan Kalkbrenner, an NBA size big, he can use his great handle and that enormous wingspan to scoop the ball around defenders and finish really, really impressively. So I think Tosan as this kind of, modern handle big. I love this play. Look, we have Tosan running like as the pick and roll spot, splitting the defense with his handle and kicking out to reset. And I think this is actually an assist for him, but just more examples of all of the crazy stuff that Tosan can do. I didn't have any defensive clips of him, but he's a really impressive defender too. Tosan's great at using his length and his strength to bump defenders at the point of attack, and he's a pretty decent rotational defender as well. Probably more of like a big wing defender than a real like big defender, which of course brings questions as like a tweener and a mid-major guy, where this is the kind of range where you have these questions where Tosan, is he going to be able to stay on the floor with his shot? How is, being an older guy playing as a mid-major going to impact him? But guys with his combination of handling skill, athletic tools, passing feel, and defensive aptitude tend to work out. And again, Tosan's probably another guy who's not going to get drafted. And I think that's kind of ridiculous, especially in this class. After 40-ish, where it falls off a ton, I think Tosan could legitimately be a very valuable player for a team. Next, let's talk 6'5", 6'6" guard Omari Moore out of San Jose State as a really interesting second-round creator bet. Long, lanky, stride length, impressive passing. We see him put future top 20 pick Brandon Podziemski in jail and fire a skip pass out to the corner. Another one of these no shooting or low shooting, high creation upside. His burst is really impressive. Look at Omari basically have a standstill versus this defender. There is obviously a screen which opens the threat of a drive inside, but quick change of pace, burst into the lane. Impressive finish there by Omari Moore. He was really impressive against this good Santa Clara team, using his change of pace and direction to get easy baskets. I think it's impressive as a 6'6" long guard. The fact that against these wing defenders, he could generate wide open layups against a set defense, which is a very impressive thing to do for any creator at the college level. The shot, again, a big problem as the misses are often short, and it's going to be TBD. It's hard to project guys who can create without threatening a defense or forcing guys to go over pick and rolls, but someone with this level of size, handling craft, burst, and passing should not fall beyond the mid-late second. He's a swing that someone should for sure take. Let's keep moving because we have a couple more guys, and this is probably going to be pretty long, but Jaylen Gortman, who did the Overtime Slam High School Instagram Hooper to actual prospect thing, where he is a pretty legit 6'4", 6'5" ball handler who improved a ton over his years at Overtime Elite as a handler with his craft. And I think the craft and the movement skills are the impressive things, where you see Jay Gort use his kind of long stride to fool this defender. This is a very athletic stance where Jay Gort he's low, he's explosive, and he uses this double cross to totally buckle this defender, sees this lane, is able to get in and finish strong with the contact. Impressive stuff. And I thought he was really good at the combine. Of course, the big question people are asking with Asar and Amen is, what are they doing against pros, blah, blah, blah. But we saw Gortman do really well against other future pros, where running the pick and roll, using pace. I love that little hop step to smoothly maneuver through this defense. This is what I talked about with the movement skills and the craft. This is a pretty tight gap, and he's slowing up. He's not really pressuring the defense. Then boom, he steps on the gas, hops through this space, draws a foul in really, really impressive fashion there. I think there's something here for sure as a crafty, like, scoring guard with a little bit of passing tools, potentially some defensive upside with the length. Another player who I think for sure should be going in the mid-late second as like an off-guard creation bet, because these movement skills I think are pretty indicative of some potential on-ball scoring upside as like a bench wingish guard with some size. And I think if the shot is passable, he could be a real guy, and someone who actually finds his place in the league, which would be really cool. Let's get on to some deeper sleepers. Hayden Jones of Southern Utah is a 6'7" shooter. Those guys are always valuable. He is awesome coming off of movement, pulling up off of step backs. He's kind of got a wonky form, but it doesn't really matter when it goes in like that. Jones is pretty bad statistically in every way except for shooting, basically. But in the tape that I was able to find, like, it seemed like his passing was okay despite the assist to turnover ratio. His defense was okay despite like the low steal and block rate. And just having someone at 6'7" who can potentially shoot a lot of different kinds of shots off of movement, off the catch, from mid-range, off of the dribble, it's just something that NBA teams really value, as we know, and something that could make Jones worth a swing in the second round. Get you a big shooter who maybe can do some other stuff off the dribble, and if he works, maybe he's a ninth man for you. And in the late second, it's a huge win. Let's go on to the last one, who I think is really interesting. Jake Stevens out of Chattanooga. Also, shout out Jalen Lawson, who I already did a video on this channel, so he's not in this video, but he would totally make this list as one of my favorite sleepers. Stevens is a fascinating player as a legitimately high-level shooter at true 7'1". Like, he is enormous and can pop into threes with ease. He's also a pretty good passer as well. Chattanooga uses him to run these dribble handoffs and find cutters on the move. Stevens isn't great in this role because his handle is pretty weak, so he gets pressured by defenders like Slauson, and he just sometimes doesn't find these passes. But showing the ability to move and dribble a little bit like this at true 7'1", like, he just looks enormous on the court, is a very impressive trait to have. The defense is going to be the big issue with Stevens, as he is just really slow, is going to have a lot of problems guarding the perimeter. He's almost exclusively like a deep drop guy, and it's going to be really easy for high-level pull-up guards and shooters to just walk into mid-range jumpers and find popping big men against him because of his really weak foot speed. But there are moments where, because of just how large he is, he can like wall off at the rim and just stand straight up and deter guys from making plays. And when you don't actually force Stevens to like move or defend pick and rolls and such, he can, park at the rim, use his size to deter shots. And I think that's potentially an interesting skill set as a bench big man. He has a very strange skill set where, if we look at the list of, true 6'10 plus guys who have shot a lot of threes and make free throws, like, it's basically no one. Only one drafted player in the last 11 years. And then if we look at the same list, these 6'10, 6'11 plus guys with less than 3 dunks, it is like the same guys and Jake Stevens. I'm curious about Eric Murphy. Definitely a name I recognize, but like really weird statistical profile, just like Jake Stevens. But Stevens is legit enormous. Like, all of these guys are like 6'10, 6'11, maybe 6'9 for the most part. Stevens is genuinely a very large human, which could make the difference in him making the back end of a rotation as a regular season big who can soak up minutes as this spacer in a motion 5-out offense. And maybe if a team is more suited defensively, for a team like Toronto or Miami or something like that, they could have someone like Stevens to be more dynamic offensively. So that is a somewhat comprehensive list of my favorite sleepers in the 2023 draft. Let me know what you think. Are there any guys I missed? Are there any sleepers you like? Let me know.